What's good? It's your boy Fanon. All right, man. So we got the numbers on the Gennady Golovkin versus Vanis Martirosyan fight on HBO, and the numbers are interesting. And it did 1 point. It averaged about 1.2 million, peaked at about 1.3 million. And it is the first time in over, it's the first time since April of 2016 that they broke a million. Not coincidentally, it was the first time since Gennady Golovkin fought Wade in 2016 that HBO pay-per-view broke 1 million viewers for a fight. Now, but considering that HBO in 2014 broke 1 million for Alvarado for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 times in 2015, 11 of their, I think, 16 events broke 1 million. Fighters like Lucas Matisse Provodnikov broke it. And then 15 in 2014, you broke it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times in 2014. Back in 2014, 2015, before Peter Nelson took over, because Peter Nelson took over pretty much right at the end. I believe at the end of 2015, he took over HBO Boxing. Before Peter Nelson took over HBO Boxing, HBO used to break 1 million, had 1 million viewers for a boxing match on a very consistent basis. In fact, it was more likely in 2015, they broke 1 million more times than they broke 1 million views more times than they didn't. In 2015, they only failed to do it 5 times. Back in 2015, HBO only missed 1 million 5 times. This was an average performance for HBO Boxing in 2015. Now note something about this. There is no regular HBO fight in 2015 that took place on Cinco de Mayo weekend. Because as we all know, Cinco de Mayo is the biggest fight week that there is in boxing. 2014, 2015, those were pay-per-view shows. So for HBO to do what should be, which prior to Peter Nelson was an average view, was average for them, for it to take a fight to take place for free on Cinco de Mayo weekend, in order for them to break that shows you the state. That shows you the state of HBO Boxing. And it's not good. A free fight. If you look at Canelo Alvarez, the last time Canelo Alvarez fought on HBO, on regular HBO, was against James Kirkland on May 9th. May 9th was 2.1 million. Almost 1 million more people back in 2015 watched Canelo Alvarez versus James Kirkland, a main event on regular HBO. Canelo Alvarez, James Kirkland, May 9th, 2015, 2.1 million. It was almost 1 million, not quite 1 million more people watched that in May 9th of 2015. That should tell you right there that one guy has Mexican style and the other one is the Mexican money. This is a performance that is not good for HBO, all things considered. Take for consideration this as well. You have, because I know there's a lot of people like to just look and say, well, this is the highest that anybody in cable TV has done so far this year. Okay, HBO, and I do this calculation on every time I do one of these videos, so it's not really I'm consistent with it, right? I'm gonna use the same measurement. I do it all the time. I take an HBO number, I take a Showtime number, and since Showtime is 30% smaller than HBO is, I always take the Showtime numbers and I multiply it by 1.3 so that I can come up with a number that is similar, right? Similar. So the first one that you can obviously take is the Deontay Wilder one, because Deontay Wilder, as far as the raw numbers, just the raw number, is the second highest, because he did I think he averaged his number was 1.2, right? So if you say, well, you take his 1.2 or his you take his 1.2 and you multiply 1.2 million, you multiply that number by 1.3, you get 1.56, you get 1.5 million. So that tells you the way that I calculate it, and I think it's fair because it's HBO. You have to be a subscriber to watch HBO. You have to be a subscriber to watch Showtime. But HBO has more subscribers. So if you have people that are just looking for something to do on a Saturday night and they know the boxing match is on, they just sit down and watch HBO. Just let it play. And there you go. You get that certain number of people just because they're going to subscribe. But you can't get people, you're not going to count people that don't have this actual subscription, right? So you just have a bigger pool. So when you multiply it by 1.3, you see that number for Deontay Wilder per subscriber is larger than Gennady Golovkin. And that was a fight in May. That was a fight in March, not a fight on Cinco de Mayo, a weekend where you're going to have a lot of people, a lot of the Mexican community who are Latino community. I hate saying that, like Hispanic community. I'm not ever quite sure how you say that, but Mexicans and Mexican Americans and Mexicans that are having Cinco de Mayo celebrations at their house, and there's a very large percentage of them are avid boxing fans, and your numbers aren't good, means that you did not captivate, and it's free. I mean, it's not even like they got to pay $60, $70 for it, right? It's on HBO. Your numbers aren't good, man. Your numbers aren't good. And you can't tell me that a household that is willing to, that is going to pay $60, $70 for HBO pay-per-view doesn't have an HBO subscription. And if you look at the numbers for the pay-per-view, at least the numbers that are reported by Golden Boy, the pay-per-view buys for Gennady Golovkin versus Canelo Alvarez were as high or higher than the free viewing of Gennady Golovkin on HBO. So the numbers it just shows you again that HBO boxing is declining. And I'm not sure, I mean, you could, and then if you take another number, right? You say, okay, well, what about Adrian Bronner? Because Adrian Bronner, I guess I should have pulled this out before I did this, but sometimes I do got to do these live stream styles, right? If you look at Adrian Bronner and Vargas, right? I think they did 900,000, roughly 900,000. they peaked at that. I think they peaked at that, like right around 900,000 might have been their peak. So if you do that, 891,000. So, just round it up a little bit and do by 9. Just do 900,000, peaked at 900,000. If it peaks at 900,000, that's about 1.1, right? It's about 1.1 to Gennady Golovkin's 1.2. So you have a good viewership on Showtime, but that again was in the month of April. That's not Cinco de Mayo. Anyway, so that's just kind of my take on these numbers. That Gennady Golovkin does have he has a big name because he's been in, there's been a lot of marketing for Gennady Golovkin. Gennady Golovkin has been fighting on HBO for a bunch of years. And so people know his name. I think this is definitely a better performance than, even though, it had the event should have had everything possible going for it. I don't know if there was an MMA fight. Somebody can correct me in the comment sections if there was an MMA fight that night. I don't think that there was, but there could have been. And it's a big boxing weekend. These numbers they're okay. They're okay. But it just shows you the decline in HBO boxing. And I think these numbers could be a lot bigger if HBO had the same level of fight cards that Showtime has. You could attract a larger percentage of very avid boxing fans. Because if you have but they did, I'll tell you though, I got to give the HBO a lot of respect for this. First of all, as far as the actual fight went, the fight was really quick. It was over in 2 rounds, but the event and the way that HBO covered it. Now, I wouldn't have watched them. Usually with HBO, what I do is I would try to catch a stream of the fight so I can avoid listening to Jim Lampley and avoid listening to that nonsense that they usually talk, because they're really all these for so many years have gone out of their way to try to sell you on what you're seeing versus letting you watch the fight and enjoy the fight. And there were so many times where they would call the fight and it was like they were actively rooting against certain fighters. Case in point was, the treatment of Guillermo Rigondeaux. When Guillermo Rigondeaux, even the fact that I say Guillermo Rigondeaux instead of Rigondeaux is because I'm so used to the way that Jim Lampley would say it. But looking at some old Rigondeaux fights, Lampley knew that that's not how you pronounce his name. But he said, look, but I'm not going to go out of my way. Essentially what he said was, I'm not going to go out of my way to pronounce it the way that the Rigondeaux wants it pronounced. I'm just going to pronounce it the way that I'm comfortable pronouncing it. And I was like, oh God. And then, there's always, the Larry Merchant times. They get in the ring and they're the center of attraction. When the way that Jim Lampley complained about Guillermo Rigondeaux, that punch at the bell with Luis Flores, those type of things. They just always that's why I would rather have an HBO subscription so I can see the Game of Thrones and some of the other series that they had. I enjoyed the Boardwalk Empire and all that, but I'd rather go through all of that. I would rather go through all the streaming on my computer, not be able to see it in high definition, not be able to see it in surround sound or any of that other stuff if I had to listen to them. But for this one, I wanted to truly enjoy Cecilia Brækhus' fight. And that is something where I think these numbers, I'm happy about the numbers because the numbers that posted for Cecilia Brækhus. Cecilia Brækhus in the, I think she did over 1 million people watch Cecilia Brækhus. It peaked at 1 million for Cecilia Brækhus versus Callie Reese. And it averaged 904,000 for a 10-round woman's fight. I have to assume that in the United States that is the biggest audience for a female fight probably since, and I'd have to go back and look at the numbers, but maybe Layla Ali, Christy Martin, something like that, because I think that would probably have been the fight that did the most viewership, but I don't believe that was on. I don't believe that was on HBO. But so it'd be interesting to know whether or not that had over 1 million people that saw it. But that's significant for women's boxing, and I'm really happy for Cecilia Brækhus to have had that opportunity, for Callie Reese to have had that opportunity, and for women's boxing to have been spotlighted in that fashion on HBO. That's why I actually stopped and listened to the HBO show. And that's why I was like, I'm not going to watch this on a stream. I'm going to watch this on HBO. I'm going to do my part to see, let that viewership, let that little bit of that one view that they got from my house that they usually don't get out of me, they got that day because of Cecilia Brækhus and Callie Reese fighting. Otherwise, whatever that actual number, it would have been one less because I wouldn't have watched it. But then, so in watching it, I listened to what the commentating did. The commentators talked about. And I got to tell you, man, I get on Jim Lampley a lot. I get on Max Kellerman a lot. I don't really get on Roy Jones Jr. at all because, hey, man, Roy Jones Jr., I believe, he comes with the truth as best as he's able, as best as he can tell it. He's one man there. And when he'll debate with Lampley, he'll debate with Kellerman. But in that fight, the way they talked about that fight, I thought that they were straight up honest as I had ever. I think they called it as the best fight that I've heard them call in years. And and the biggest example of that is at no point in time in that whole thing, at no point did they overhype Gennady Golovkin. Now, I can't say the same thing for ESPN, right? ESPN, who spread that, that Gennady Golovkin 20 title defense talk. Now, I can't say that for them because ESPN went with that, right? I think they ran it on a ticker as if that was real, and it's not. But HBO didn't do that. So the way that I judge the deal, it was a good night. It's a good night for HBO. It's a good night for HBO. It was a good night. It was a good move from Peter Nelson to have Cecilia Brækhus on that card. I don't know what happened with Chocolatito. Whatever happened with Roman Gonzalez, they kept him off that card. And I don't know. It's maybe money, maybe budget was the reason. I don't know. I don't know what it was. But whatever it was, it kept Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez off of that card. Hey, I'm glad that he wasn't on that card because HBO did something for boxing that I think was exceptional. They have the biggest stage, regular stage in boxing. I think it's all right. Well, it's not CBS big or NBC big because it's a subscription channel, but it is a historically relevant, it's a big stage in boxing. And for them to give that to Cecilia Brækhus and Callie Reese, I think was a really good deal. So they deserved my support for that fight. Again, they did not partake in a overhyped job of Gennady Golovkin. That was another really good thing that I appreciated out of them. So the numbers being good for them, for being the first time that they break 1 million in over 2 years, hey, I'm happy for them. I hope that they think that those are good numbers. And if they continue to call fights like that, hey, man, I might be willing to actually listen. I might actually be willing to listen on HBO instead of streaming it and going through whatever else I got to do to avoid hearing them talk. That was a big positive step forward. And I was going to do a video about it like right when it happened. But I was like, you know, I'll just wait until the numbers come out and I'll do it towards the tail end of the video. Because I don't want to shine too much light on them cats, because one good show is just one good show, you know. But we'll see what happens when the fight, when the next pay-per-view fight takes place. And I believe that's going to be in September with Gennady Golovkin versus Canelo Alvarez. That's the most logical thing. I would love to see it if, you know, if that fight didn't happen, that they could do some type of partnering deal with Gennady Golovkin and Jamal Charlo for a fight to take place. You know, I don't know how they could, you know, originally air on Showtime, replays, you know, show on HBO or whatever they have to do. But, you know, it is what it is. And with that, I'm out. Peace.